there are all sorts of people talking about this, the anti-wheat, the wheat-free movement, the claims that wheat is bad, that it not only puts fat in the belly, but it also leads to schizophrenia. It leads to cancer. So they're going to refute some of those claims tonight. This morning, we have our registered dietitian, Sue Mah, in with us. We want to talk more about this. Great to see you.
Thank you so
on
much.
This. As I said, everyone is talking gluten-free. We want to get your take on it. Mark's big question to the scientists is it wrong to eat wheat? And that's going to form the basis of his investigation. What's your take on all of this?
Oh gosh, so wheat is such a big buzzword these days, and I always am skeptical when one food or one nutrient is vilified, and in this case it's wheat. You know, wheat's not the bad guy. I think we do have to watch portion sizes, and this whole idea that wheat contains gluten, that is true. However, there are so many myths around gluten and who needs to eat a gluten-free diet, and I'm hoping that we can share some of these myths and bust them with the viewers.
Let us do that. Here, the myth is that gluten is bad for everyone. That is a myth.
It is a myth, and you know what? I think you said it so well in the introduction that 1% of the population actually has celiac disease, and in that condition, which is an autoimmune condition, the intestine just doesn't absorb nutrients the way it does because the gluten is damaging the intestine. So about 1% of the population has celiac. Another 4 to 6% of the population has something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And so, you know, they have the same symptoms as someone with celiac, but it's not an autoimmune disease, and it may not damage the small intestine the way celiac does.
So gluten, other than that, is not bad for you.
Well, and so for the majority of us, I mean, there's 1% of the population who have a wheat allergy.
Right.
So wheat allergy, celiac, or non-celiac gluten sensitivity, all of those people, you must avoid wheat and gluten for sure. But for the 90% of us who don't have those conditions, there's really no medical reason to avoid gluten or to take wheat out of the diet.
And yet we know, again, from Mark's investigation on the Fifth Estate, 56% of Canadians are cutting back on their consumption of wheat and gluten. The sale of gluten-free products and wheat-free products was about $6 billion in sales. This is a huge industry. People think, even if they don't have the conditions you mentioned, that going gluten-free is healthier. That, too, is a myth.
Well, that's another myth because, you know, gluten-free foods often have less fiber, more fat, more sugar, more salt, and sometimes even more calories. More and less fiber. And so sometimes we think, you know, the word free means good. Sodium-free, trans-fat-free means the absence of these negative nutrients like sodium and trans fat. But with gluten-free, there's also the absence of these positive nutrients that we want. We want fiber, you know, we want the B vitamins, we want the iron and folate, which are not in gluten-free products for the most part.
So going gluten-free, except for the people who have medical reasons, is essentially today a fad diet. Is that right?
Well, you know what? It can be a fad diet, and I'm nervous because if you're following a strict gluten-free diet, you can be putting yourself at risk for these nutrient deficiencies, the B vitamins, the folate, and the iron. And not only that, but gluten-free foods are 1.5 times, sometimes even more expensive than the same food.
They are not cheap. So a great reason for having Sue in is not just to inform us, but also to show us alternatives. How can then we put the wheat back in the menu, put the gluten back in the menu, but eat healthfully?
Well, you know, I think one thing is that we have to look at portion sizes. So I've brought in 2 plates of pasta.
Yes.
This is whole wheat pasta. So whole wheat's a whole grain, and the benefit of whole grains is that it contains all 3 parts of the seed, so you're getting a bundle of nutrients. So make a fist. This is about 1 cup of pasta.
Right.
And that counts as 2 servings of grains. Now, most of us probably don't have this amount of food. Most of us are probably eating this amount of pasta.
Yes, maybe more.
Or maybe more, exactly. So this is actually 2 fists. So this is already 4 servings of grains, and in a day we need 6 to 8 servings. So I think portions is really something that we need to be aware of, because if you think this is a portion and you're eating this 3 or 4 times a day, wow.
No wonder you might be putting on weight. It's more to do with
so it's not the wheat, it's really the portions of foods.
What else?
Well, you know, I've brought in some different whole grains. So this is barley, quinoa, and brown rice. And as I mentioned, whole grains are healthy for us. In fact, just today, a study released in the American Journal of Cardiology showed that people who ate 3 to 4 servings of whole grains every day had a 22% lower chance of developing heart disease. And we know that there's great research to show that whole grains help with weight control, help reduce your risk of diabetes, and also colorectal cancer. So this is barley, which I love to eat. It does contain gluten, but you know what? It's a staple in my home because it's so easy to cook.
I've never made anything with barley, but you could make it. Sue's going to also, you're going to find online some recipes that Sue has provided. You can make soup and things like with that barley?
You can make pilaf, a barley pilaf, soup. You can use it as a side dish. excellent. Quinoa
A
happens...
staple in my house.
And mine too.
Love
Happens
it.
to be gluten-free, and I don't have celiac, I don't have a wheat
No,
allergy,
nor do
but
I.
I just eat it because I love the taste and it adds variety to my diet, so why not? And same with brown rice.
Okay.
Also gluten-free, another staple, and I just enjoy it because it adds variety to my diet. Extra nutrition, lots of fiber.
So you have posted some ideas. For example, apple cheddar brunch strata with berries.
Right. This is a great recipe, and it uses whole grain bread. Like, I don't know about you, but I've always got leftover bread in the house, right? So it uses slices of whole grain bread, you layer it with some cheese, then some apples, and then you repeat the layers. You know, the bread, the cheese, and the apples. Pour some milk and eggs, let it sit in the fridge overnight, or at least an hour. The next morning, sprinkle some fresh berries on top, bake it in the oven, and guess what? Brunch is ready, and the house smells delicious.
All right, the next one is the barley minestrone soup, and we've kind of talked about that a little bit, so maybe we won't spend much time on that, but we can find the ingredients and directions online.
Absolutely.
But I do want to spend, because I love kale. Here's another hot food, a superfood, kale. So you have a barley and lentil salad with kale, apples, almonds, and feta. Tell me more about this.
Well, the reason why I love this recipe, again, it's because it's combining different types of vegetarian proteins. And with this recipe, you actually toast the barley ahead of time, and that helps to bring out the nuttiness and that wonderful flavor of the barley. So you just mix it with lentils, you know, or any other bean that you might have on hand. Add some kale, you can add spinach or any other vegetable that you have, add some feta cheese and almond, you know, a nice vinaigrette. It's just a nice, easy recipe to make, and it's so packed with nutrition.
Okay. Sue, thank you.